My daughter Savannah is the CEO of faking illness to get out of school. So when she does not feel like being there, she will go to the nurse's office and complain to them that she is really not feeling good so that they call me and I have to go get her. Well, one day after this happens, I walk into the administrative office and everybody is really concerned because Savannah is sitting in a chair like so dramatically like, hi, Mom. And like when I saw her, I burst out laughing. I was like, oh my God, are you okay? And everybody looked at me like I was some really bad mom. Like, oh my God, why aren't you more concerned? But as we were walking out, she was walking really slow and actually didn't look good. So even I was a little concerned. I was like, oh my God, honey, are you okay? Until we got to the car when Savannah looks at me and goes, you know what, Mom, I feel better now. And I was like, Savannah, are you serious? And she's like, Mom, do you maybe want to go to Starbucks and have like a girls' day? And I was like, honey, what kind of question is that? You know I do. So about 3 years ago, while my daughter Charlotte was sleeping, I started hearing some really weird noises coming from her room. So like a good mom, I went in there to investigate, make sure she was okay. Now, I started panicking because she was breathing really crazy. And mind you, she spent a good portion of the first year of her life in the hospital because she like went into pending respiratory failure, literally was on life support for a few months and yada, yada, yada. Whole long, sad story for another time. Anyways, so I don't want to wait for the ambulance. I am panicking. I put her in my car. I drive to the emergency room as fast as I can. I'm basically blowing through red lights. I get there right to the front, go inside, and I'm like, oh my God, somebody please help me. Like my baby's barely breathing. She has a history of this. And they take her right away and assess her. And they let me know like, hey, you know, calm down. Everything's fine. Like her oxygen levels are good. Like, please describe what you heard. And I was like, I don't know. Like she was making these crazy noises. She's having trouble breathing. And then the doctor tells me, y'all, she was just snoring. So when my husband and I were first dating, like a month into our relationship, it was his birthday. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do something nice for him. I'm going to surprise him by making him a birthday cake because I'm like trying to get this guy to fall in love with me, right? So I go to the store, get the ingredients, and I make 2 cake pans, pull them out of the oven, flip the first one over, and it crumbles into a million pieces. And I'm like, it's fine. I have the other one. Flip that one over and half of it crumbles into a million pieces. And I'm like, oh no, like what am I supposed to do? This guy's about to be at my house. I don't have time to redo it. So I'm like, I am going to fix it by myself. So I take my hands and I mash it all back together, except that it's not in the form of a cake anymore. It's now in the form of a hill. And I'm like, you know what? It's fine. Once I ice it, he won't even notice. I go to ice it, but the knife is picking up the cake pieces. So I'm like, oh, like what am I supposed to do? I get the bright idea to ice it with my fingers and it worked. But he shows up at my house and I'm like, happy birthday. And he's like, what is this? So when Savannah was in the 4th grade, I get this letter from her school that says I owe the cafeteria over $50. And I'm like, so confused reading this letter, right? Because I made this child's lunch for her every single day. And I'm so extra when I make it. I leave her notes. I get the good snacks. I get the good drinks. So when she comes home from school, I'm like, Savannah, why do I owe your cafeteria money? I just got a letter in the mail. And she was like, I don't know. Like, I get free lunch at school. And I was like, no, you don't. You don't get free lunch. And I make your lunch for you every day. So what are you talking about? And she was like, well, sometimes I throw yours away. And sometimes I eat an extra lunch there, and sometimes I just put them in my room, and I've been meaning to throw those away. And I was like, like, back up, what'd you just say? Show me right now. So we go into her room, and like hidden deep in this cabinet, like she's trying to be all slick, is like this graveyard of old lunch sandwiches that are, thank God, still sealed in Ziploc bags. And I'm like, gross, like what is this in here? Why would you do this? And she was like, so when my daughter Charlotte was born, it was a really tough time for me and my family because I had a very complicated pregnancy and she ended up being in the NICU for over 2 months. Well, during that time, all I ever did was shuffle back and forth between home and the hospital. So my husband one night was like, hey, let's go out. Like we have this Halloween party we could go to because Halloween is my favorite holiday, you know? And I was like, yes, let's do it. So we go out, we're in full costume, like we look bomb, we have a great time. And then directly after, I'm like, let's go to the hospital so we can see Charlotte. So we go to the hospital like in our full costumes, right? Just took the masks off, but we had them with us. We went upstairs to the NICU and Charlotte looked so beautiful in her little candy corn pajamas. And I looked at the nurse and I was like, would you mind taking a picture of us, please? And she was like, yeah, no problem. But then I looked at DJ and I was like, oh my God, let's put our masks back on. And he's like, no, like that's so weird. It's inappropriate. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, let's do it. And it produced the greatest family photo of all time. Ayo! So when my husband and I were dating, he asked me if I could take him to LAX one day. because he needed to catch a flight back home. And I was like, ugh, like if you live out here, you know it's the worst drive ever. But I was like, yeah, sure, no problem, you know. So we're driving to LAX, and I'm driving us to LAX, and we're talking the entire time, and I'm not really paying attention. And he goes, oh look, there's the 405. I'm this close to missing the exit, and I am all the way in the left lane. And he looks over his shoulder and he goes, you got it. So without even thinking, without even looking over my shoulder, I just whoop, turn the steering wheel, drive like from this to cross every single lane of traffic, which is like 6 lanes. I drive my car through the plastic dividers, which is now a wall because of people like me. And there's a hill, right, that I did not realize. So I drive through, up and over the hill, and my car's like, whoa! My husband is screaming the entire time. And at the end, I was just like, oh my God, my bad. I have no idea why I just did that. I almost killed us. So I asked Savannah to clean her room yesterday because I walked in there to vacuum and I realized that it was a disaster. So I'm like, oh my God, you need to clean your room right now. Like, you have so much stuff to do in here and you have till the end of the day. Okay, like, this is unacceptable. And she's like, okay, I'll get it done. And I'm like, great, we'll see. So she spends most of the day in there cleaning her room, right? And I go in at night to check on her. And when I walk into her room, what do I see? She is sitting in the middle of the floor with this little fake flame LED candle going like this. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm using this little candle so that I could see, so that I could clean my room. And I'm like, you know what would help you see? Maybe if you actually turn on a light in here. I don't know. So a few years ago, my husband and I planned this really fun, kid-free trip to Seattle for like 3 or 4 days. And while we were there, we made reservations to have a really nice bomb dinner up in the Space Needle, and I was really looking forward to it. Well, before our reservations, we had hopped on a ferry to Bremerton and then hopped back on a ferry to head back to downtown Seattle to make our dinner reservations. Well, while we're on the ferry, I realized, like, I am getting hangry and I need to get a snack. I cannot wait. And then I realized they're selling cheesy bacon tater tots, and I get really excited because I love those, by the way. So I go to my husband and I was like, oh my God, they're selling cheesy bacon tater tots. I'm going to get some. Do you want some? And he was like, no, like, they're fairy tater tots, Laura. Do you even see a kitchen around here? Honestly, if you eat those, you're probably gonna get sick. And I was like, you're ridiculous. I don't even care. And I ate them anyways. So we're sitting at our dinner reservations when I realized, like, I am not feeling good. And he's like, yeah, well, I told you not to eat those cheesy bacon tater tots. Like, you never listen to me. Who does that? Who eats fairy tater tots, Laura? So a few years ago, when my husband and I were in Vegas, we went to this place called Beechers Madhouse in MGM, and it's not there anymore, but when it was there, it was like this cool variety show, and hands down, it was the funnest place I've ever been in my life. Like, they would have caricatures come and hang out and dance with you and stuff, but they also did this really weird thing where they would hook up little people onto the zip line, like, dressed like celebrities, and fly them across the club. Well, my husband and I were hanging out in the back by this stage that, like, you're really not supposed to be standing on or anything, but I was like, I don't even care. I'm living my best life right now, and I look cute. So I get up, and I start dancing, and I also had a little too much to drink. Well, I wasn't paying attention, and they hooked up little John onto the zip line and start flying him across the club, and he accidentally kicks me in the back of the head, and I flew off this stage. And I'm all like dazed and confused, like, oh my God, what just happened? And my husband is hysterically laughing next to me. And little John came up to me afterwards and was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I was like, bro, like, it's fine. Like, I can't believe that just happened to me. I look like that one picture of James Charles. So when Savannah was 5 years old, my husband and I took her to Santa Monica Pier to ride her first big girl rides. Well, if you've ever been to Santa Monica Pier, you know they have that big swinging green dragon ride, just like the pirate ship ones, right? Well, she really wanted to go on it, and she met the height requirements to get on, but I was like, I don't know, like, I think you're going to be really scared, like, it's a terrifying ride. And she's like, oh, Mom, please. Well, I'm weak, and I was like, that's fine, like, okay, like, we'll go on, but we'll sit in the middle instead of on the end, so it's less scary for you. So we get on the ride, my husband's on one side, me and Savannah are on the other, and my husband has a camera to capture the moment. Well, the ride starts moving, and my sweet little angelic child goes from smiling to looking like something that is not even human. And looking back, I should have just said no. Mom fail. Here's my sweet little baby before. So when my husband and I were first dating, like 2 or 3 months into our relationship, he had to leave to go out to sea. Military. But shortly before he left, I had gone by his barracks room, and I realized, like, he didn't have any picture frames up of his family, his command, like, nothing. So I was like, hey, like, why don't you have anything up? Don't you want that? And he was like, typical guy, right? He was like, that'd be cool. So, but in my mind, I was like, I am going to make your dreams come true, and you're going to fall in love with me, dude. So I find this picture of his command, and I blow it up to, like, an 8x10, have it printed, frame it, decorate it with ribbons, stickers. It looks beautiful, right? And I'm like, I'm so thoughtful, you know. So he comes by my house before he leaves, and I'm like, hey, I have something for you. And he's like, oh, do you? And I was like, yes, I do. Here you go. But in this moment, instead of him being so excited, he was like, where'd you get this picture from? And I was like, oh, like every girl's worst fear, right? Like, you're gonna figure out that I'm actually crazy, because we all are, right? And so I was like, well, I found it on your Facebook tag photos from a few years ago, so I printed it for you. So when I was pregnant with my son, the night before Easter, I went out into my backyard to start making my Easter extravaganza. I make holidays a really big deal in my house, but when I went back there, I realized our grass was super long because it hadn't been cut in like a month because we were in between landscape people at the time. So I went inside to my husband all emotional, and I was like, oh my god, babe, the kids aren't going to be able to do the Easter egg hunt tomorrow. The grass is too long. Please go take care of the backyard. And he was like, well, I don't know what you want me to do about it. Like, we don't have a lawnmower or anything. So I was like, well, I'll figure it out. So I go into the kitchen, and I grab scissors, and I come back to him, and I was like, here you go. And he was like, what do you think I'm gonna do with these? And I was like, please just go cut the grass. We have a very big backyard. So just to entertain me, and very sarcastically, he goes into the backyard and starts doing it. And I'm watching him, right? And all of a sudden he stops and looks at me and goes, Laura, the neighbors are gonna look over the fence and be like, look at this dumbass cutting his grass with scissors. And in that moment, I realized how crazy it is watching this full-grown adult, like, on all fours, cutting our grass with scissors, and it made me laugh so hard I fully peed my pants, right? So a couple of years ago, I'm picking up Savannah from school. It's back when she's in the 4th grade. And she gets into my car, and I'm like, hey, honey, how was your day? And she's like, it was great. I had a great day. And I'm like, oh, yay. I'm so happy to hear that. Hey, by the way, I know parent-teacher conferences are coming up. Is there anything you maybe want to tell me about before I get in there? You know, maybe give me a heads up? Anything I should know? And she goes, well, I thought I turned in my homework every single day for the whole semester. But it turns out, my teacher told me today that I haven't turned in a single piece of homework for the whole semester. And I'm like, after my husband and I were already dating for like 3 years and living together, I started to get a little impatient with him on the whole marriage thing. Because like when I first met him, I was all like, I love you, we're gonna get married and have kids one day. Like, I'm that crazy person. And also, I'm a Capricorn, right? So I already have no patience for anything in life. And one day we're arguing in our living room, and I decided like I was gonna bring it up again so I could win the argument, you know? So I'm all like super dramatic, and I'm like, are you ever even gonna propose to me? Are we gonna get married one day? Do you even love me? And he's all like, the most sarcastic person on the planet, right? He's like, oh my god, since you can't be patient for anything, hold on a second. And like goes to the bedroom, comes back out, and he's like, Jesus, will you marry me? And I'm like, oh my god, like you really just decided to propose to me right now while we're in the middle of arguing in our living room? Yes, I'll marry you. What? Let me see that ring. So when I was like 7 months pregnant with my son, I got a really intense craving for pickles one day, like most pregnant women do. So I went up into my cabinet and I grabbed a jar of speared pickles and I started eating them. But I never stopped. I ate the entire jar, and that also wasn't enough. I drank all the juice as well. And it was awesome until about 30 minutes later when it set in and my stomach started hurting really bad and cramping and I was in a lot of pain. So I got up and ran to the nearest bathroom, which happens to be next to my dining room, which is also where my husband was sitting down and eating at that time. And when I run past, I'm like, oh my god, ow! And he looks at me all concerned like, well, when I get to the bathroom, like, I don't even close the door. I sit down and I started having the most explosive diarrhea of my life. Like, it was literally liquid coming out. And I know that's TMI, I'm sorry. But my husband gets up and runs over, and I'm thinking he's gonna check on me, but he doesn't. He runs over and he's like, oh my god, woman, close the door when you're going to the bathroom. And I'm hysterically laughing, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I ate a whole jar of pickles. And he's like, I don't care, close the door, that's disgusting, I'm eating. So a little while back, I take Savannah to her annual eye exam. Everything goes great. She has 20/20 vision. She sees perfectly. Doesn't get her eyes dilated. When we go to leave, I am pushing her little brother and sister in these 2 umbrella strollers. So I'm already like, oh, like trying to figure out how to coordinate pushing the 2 of them. And I'm like, hey, honey, like, can you get the door for me? And the doors that we're walking out of are double doors. And she's like, yeah, I'll get the door for you. And I'm like, awesome, thank you. Oh, that'll be helpful. And so she goes over to the door and she starts pushing where the hinges are. And she looks back at me like, the door won't open. And I'm like, Savannah, honey, like, grab the handle, push the handle. And so she goes over to the other door and starts pushing on the hinges. And she looks back at me again like, it still won't open. And I'm like, Savannah, grab the door handle to open the door. So she walks back again and starts pushing on that other hinge one more time, and I'm just like, I'll get it. So for Halloween, I really like to do matching costumes for me and my family, and 2 years ago I decided that the theme we were going to do is Harry Potter. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I'm like a really big Harry Potter fan. Well, my kids were going to be wizards, I was going to be Bellatrix Lestrange, my husband was going to be Lord Voldemort, and my brother was going to be Hagrid. Well, for my husband's costume, like I had a hard time finding a good one, so I ended up taking a risk and getting one on Amazon from a third-party seller, which is so hit or miss, right? But his package comes in, and my husband, by the way, doesn't really like Halloween that much, but he gets all dressed up and stuff because I make him. Anyways, his package comes in, and he looks at it, and he's like, what is this? And I was like, it's Lord Voldemort, like, please just put it on. And he was like, Laura, I am not wearing this out in public. Have you seen what you ordered? And I'm like, yeah, it looks great. And then I looked at it, and it looks so stupid. So when my husband and I first started dating, he had to leave to go on his first deployment. And I was having a really rough time during that time because, you know, we were like newly dating and still getting to know each other. And then he had to leave military life, right? That's what you signed up for. But he decided he was going to go ahead and try to make it better. So he sent me an email and was like, hey, I got you some gifts. I'm going to send them to you in the mail. You should be expecting them sometime this week. And I was like so excited, right? Because I'm like, new relationship, like you're wooing me. So I'm like, is it going to be a purse? Is it going to be some shoes? Is it going to be some jewelry? We're going to find out. And then the packages come. I grab them. I'm so excited. And I open the first one. Never in my life did I expect to see an electric can opener. And I'm like, what a weird thing to send to somebody that you're dating. And then I open the second package and I see a thing of measuring cups. And I'm like, all right, I'm catching a theme here. Kitchen stuff. Like, what are you trying to tell me? Well, it turns out he thought I was a terrible cook, So like a year and a half ago, I was in Vermont hanging out with my 8 nieces and nephews, and I was trying to think of some games we could play that I loved as a kid that they had never played before, and I come up with the idea of Red Rover, which is the funnest game ever. So I set us all up. One team is on one side of a field, my team is on another side of a field, but I hate to lose. So I give my nieces and nephews on my team a pep talk like, you guys better not let them break through your arms. And they're like, oh, Aunt Laura, we won't. And I was like, all right, great. Well, I'm holding on to my 7-year-old niece's arm, and my 13-year-old nephew starts charging through as fast as he can, and he's very strong. And she hesitates like she's gonna let go of my arm. And I grabbed her harder like, honey, not today. Well, he broke through anyways, and then she fell onto the ground like, ah, my shoulder, and I'm like, oh my God, your mom is gonna kill me. I picked her up and carried her back to the house. She's a little thing. Well, we play another round without that one, and my 11-year-old niece gets hurt and starts screaming and crying the second time, and then I remembered why this was a band game at my elementary school.